Please excuse the video quality, as this was mostly shot handheld using an iPhone. Thank you.
All right, here we are. So I guess I'll start with an explanation as to why I even took this project on. I had just come back from working all winter in the oil fields of Alaska, and I've been saving up my earnings with the plan to really take my home studio setup to the next level. And I'd seen ads and videos of the platform desk that Output was making, and it looked like just the right desk. Great design, affordable, aesthetically pleasing, and simple. It's kind of like the Apple Store of studio desks. But it was April 2020, and all throughout the world, a little guy named COVID-19 was terrifying absolutely everyone. It was crazy. And one of the things that was dramatically impacted by the pandemic was a company's ability to supply their online order demand. The platform desk was on a 3-month back order, and Output flat out stopped shipping to Alaska and Hawaii. Story of our lives as Alaskans. But I was not about to wait it out, so I began to look at other options. I looked for other companies making affordable studio desks that would accomplish what I had in mind for the studio and ship to Alaska, but alas, nothing. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I was going to build my own desk, and not just some rinky-dink kiddie desk. I was going to build myself a proper studio desk with all the fixins. Heated seats, power windows, sunroof, stock turbo, sound system, all the bells and whistles. Not realizing I had decided to bite off more than I had expected to chew, I started looking at other YouTube videos of people doing a DIY platform desk, and I came across this video, uploaded by Richard Dizarega, where he had made some modifications to the design to allow the rack gear to drop through the desk surface and mount flush with the dividers. What a move. Which got me thinking, what other modifications could I make to the desk to make it even better? Ooh, the big legs that run up the outside of the desk and hold the monitor shelf seemed to me a bit of an eyesore to the whole desk. It just made it really obvious that this was just planks of plywood held together, so I inset them into the desk so they'd be flush with the edge of the desk surface on the outsides. And the rack bays were only a 3-use slot, not nearly big enough. I wanted this desk to last me years and years, and I knew that I'd fill that up too quickly, and I didn't want to have to go build myself a sidecar so soon. So I made them a full 4U slot, taking my total rack living area from 9U to a whopping 12U. Wonderful. And in Richard's video, he only cut a slot for the racks that drop through the desk on the 2 outside bays. I bet I could do all 3. And I didn't like the cable management system Output used, mainly because I was building it myself and I didn't feel like adding the whole little shelf thing, plus finding the spacers for that was not something I felt like doing at this point, so I just routed the cable management holes right into the desk itself. And as you can see, I was on a shopping spree of little ideas to make this desk the best design for me and my needs, completely ignoring the fact that with each upgrade, I inevitably created even more work for myself. Why think about the doing it part? If I focus on how much work it'll take and simply try to get the desk done as soon as possible, I'd just end up at Target and ultimately be unsatisfied. Sometimes you just gotta set a goal, get drunk on excitement, push that goal even further out, not thinking about anything except how cool it's going to be when you get there. So, I set out to drawing up some blueprints. Luckily, Richard included some great detailed drawings of his plans, but as I made some modifications, I had to redraw some and, as the new updated version, because I wanted this build to go off without a hitch. That alone took about a week, because why would I have a protractor or a basic understanding of trigonometry? Neither of those things are necessary for making music. After getting the plans drawn out, it was time to go buy the materials and begin the build. And here we are. So I'm just taking the cut plans and transferring them to the plywood to cut all the pieces out, and just double checking all of my math, making sure everything's all good to go. I'd say this was probably the most enjoyable part of the whole build process because I had no idea what was ahead of me, and it was really relaxing. Just sipping a beer, as you can see in the background, and drawing on wood. And the way that I designed the desk surface itself is made up of 2 pieces of plywood glued together. And I drew where the cuts would come out from underneath the desk and above the desk. And so I drew out all of the cut plans for the underside of the desk and the top side. So when I glued them together, I make sure the angled cuts would come in contact with both lines, making sure that my angle was correct. And I began cutting. And I just used that big piece of wood there as a track for my skill saw to make sure all my lines were really smooth and straight. And you can see all the pieces as I'm working, just laying them out as I go. Shout out to Grandma for that bandana blanket. Kept my wood from getting scratched by the asphalt. Props to Granny. And right here, I'm just working on the desk surface, kind of rough cutting the rack gear slots and the cable management holes. I knew I was going to come back and clean those up later. Shout out to Shiloh there in the background. He worked with me up on the slope that winter, but couldn't go back home to Texas due to COVID being, COVID. So he stayed with us for most of the summer and was just helping me kind of rough sand those pieces there. Thank you, Shiloh. And right here, I'm just going over the cuts for the rack gear to drop through and actually putting that angle in them. And switching to a handsaw there, trying to get a more precise cut, but ultimately decided it was too slow, and I switched back to the Sawzall and figured I'll just come back and smooth it out with a power sander and some wood filler. Cinco de Mayo! Had some margaritas, some chips and salsa, and hung out with the boys. Just worked on putting a round over on all the sharp corners of the stuff, and right here throwing the rabbit in to the big legs to hold up the monitor shelf. Had to take a chip and salsa break there, because, Cinco de Mayo. Skateboarded a little bit and then cleaned up most of the wood with mineral spirits and got it ready for finishing. That day ended up actually being really fun. My grandma and mother came out and had some margaritas with us as well. And here I am just throwing lacquer on the wood because at this point I hadn't had any plans to do anything but clear coat, and lacquer was a clear coat of choice. I recommend doing this on a sunny day because you can just skate with your friends while you wait for it to dry. I sure spent a lot of time waiting for lacquer to dry. What a time. And here I'm just going along the divider supports in between the rack gear slots, making sure they're all clean and flush and ready for those 2 boards to get glued together. And just double checking that the leg slots would fit, and sure enough they did. And right here, I'm just putting wood filler on those angled cuts that I used the Sawzall for to try and smooth those out. And pro tip, glue the boards first. I realized as it was drying that I forgot to glue the boards and I had to go back and do it. Ended up being fine, but it was more work. And just smoothing that wood filler back down, making sure everything's nice and smooth and straight for the most part. And really, this was about the last of the big kind of grunt work stuff that I had to take care of, which is why I saved that for the last bit, because those angled cuts, I'm telling you, were not fun. And so now with all that out of the way, I threw the roundovers on the cable management holes in the edge of the desk to get it ready for finish. Excuse the quality drop. I was using my brother's phone to film this part, who's here with me masking off the desk because we decided at this point, hey, you know what? Let's add some life to this desk and put some paint on it. I forgot to mention I also routed out the underside of the desk just above the keyboard tray, just about 3 inches in from the outsides just to reduce a little bit of weight. So in this next bit, I'm just going to be talking about the tools and gadgets and things that I use to build it. And I mean, if you're not curious or you're not looking to build one yourself, you're welcome to go ahead and skip to part 2 right now. All right, so as you can see, I had to shave my face. I got a job that I have to wear a respirator. Anyways, moving on. We're past that. So I've been coming to some issues with the assembly part as I am using these threaded inserts to assemble the desk. Basically, drill a hole, put this insert in, and that now on the inside has a threaded hole into which I can screw a machine screw and, put it together. So when I'm putting that hole in this direction into the flat face of a board, easy enough. I just built this little guy by getting a bunch of pieces, putting some crosshairs on them, drilling holes through it, and then I cut out 12 of them, glued them all together so that the drill bit that runs through, it can't go in there and start cranking around side to side. It's held perfectly stable, 90 degrees. And so basically when I use it, I just set it on the surface and then drill through perfectly straight hole. But the issue is if I need to put a insert this direction, I don't have much leeway. As you can see, the insert itself is pretty big. It takes up a lot of room. So if I kind of went in crooked or slightly off, it could be catastrophic. So I built this little guy. So on a table saw, I just notched out a 3/4 inch slot so it'll slide on just like that. And then this top section will basically just be this guy. And so I'll have a perfectly 90-degree hole through the center. And that should allow me to drill holes in this tiny little space with minimal error. We'll see how that goes. Me from the future here. Well, I was onto the right idea. The execution was not the best as a 2x4, not the highest quality cut of wood. It dried out a little bit more and warped or whatever. It was just an old 2x4. It didn't work very well. So I got a local place to machine it for me. So as you can see, it's, same shape, same idea. Hole through the middle there where the wood, fits on right there. And then those little rectangle blocks I made with the crosshairs to drill holes through on the flat surface of the wood. I basically just took the top section right here. As you can see, it's a solid block right there. I just put the holes in the side like that. So if I'm going to drill into the flat face, I just lay this on its side and bingo. So basically just turns, your regular cordless power tool drill into a drill press by holding the drill bit perfectly perpendicular to the surface you're drilling in. So much more accurate. Definitely better than anything I was going to do by hand. So, but pro tip, obviously when you're drilling in this way to get in the middle of the wood, you want this thing tight, really secure on there so it doesn't move or anything, which would pose a problem. And if it's that tight, it's kind of hard to get the wood in there. So I had the kind of hard to see, these screws are accessible, and this is basically just 2 plates of metal screwed together around like a little gap piece here. So having those accessible, I can back them out, kind of loosen this up, fit it over the wood, clamp it down, tighten it, do my business. So yeah, anyway, back to the video. Same idea, same process, just much more accurate. All right, little video explanation here as to how I got these metal inserts into the desk without them going all skewed and whatnot. So I built this little jig here, and how it works is you screw on this insert like that. Use these as just like a depth stopper, and you'll press this down into the hole that it's going to go into, and this will hold it perfectly vertical. And then
with a wrench or a ratchet, you can actually really get some torque on there and get this fully inserted into the wood. And once it's there, the friction will hold it in place, and then when you turn it back, it'll actually just unscrew, leaving the insert perfectly inserted into the wood. Haha. Boy, what a handy little piece of kit this thing is. Saved my life, because that would have been a nightmare to do otherwise. And here's a little video explanation as to how I will be assembling the desk. As you can see right here, using that tool, I was able to put the inserts right through the middle of this, no issues here. And then on some of the bigger pieces, it's a little bit easier. And then the flat sides, of course. And so the screws, machine screws, will just thread right into that. And I'll assemble it. And basically the pieces that it goes through, that would be why I had two different size holes drilled through that tool, was because I just needed a size big enough for the screw to go through here, and then another hole big enough for the insert to go in. So, I would then screw this into that insert, and these would be screwed together. So that is how the desk will be assembled. Pretty simple stuff once you have the jigs made to help you get perfectly straight holes. But yeah, everything worked perfectly, no issues. I can take it apart. I can, easily move the desk from room to room. It won't be an issue. So I went ahead and did a mock assembly before, getting into paint and finishing and everything to make sure everything fit. And like a glove, my friend. All the cuts were super dead on. Everything fit super snug, so I'm pretty stoked about that. But I got everything taken apart and hung up in a little makeshift paint room in my garage. So we'll end this video as it's getting super long, and we will pick up where we left off in a part 2, and I'll be doing all the paint and finishing and all the little detail stuff and the final assembly. Oh boy, I cannot wait. It's been a long time coming. I'm excited though, everything's going pretty well. Let's get on to it. Stay tuned.
There's no